Welcome back to the channel, the Sane Society Channel. A lot of y'all want to hear me read this book, so I'm going to continue reading it. Eric Fromm, The Sane Society. This book was published in 1955, over three-quarters of a century ago. Very close to it. Okay, let's continue. Page 19. The following chapters are an attempt to answer this question and to arrive at a critical evaluation of the effect contemporary Western culture has on the mental health and sanity of the people living under our system. However, before we enter into the specific discussions of these questions, it seems that we should take up the general problem of the pathology of normalcy, which in the premise understand which is the premise underlying the whole trend of thought expressed in this book. It seems that we should take up the general problem of the pathology of normalcy. Wow, you hear that? Pathology of normalcy, which is the premise underlying the whole trend of thought expressed in this book. This is why the book is titled The Sane Society, because it's saying that this normalcy is a pathology. It's not sane. You get it? So he's being very ironic with his choice of words in the title and how he chooses to express himself. Chapter 2, page 21. Can a society be sick? Question mark. The pathology of normalcy. See, he's elaborating on this word. He said pathology of normalcy. In other words, an unscientific way of saying would be the sickness of being normal, the pathology of being normal. People think normalcy is being something like healthy. You know, everybody's normal. So he's saying no. Being sane or being normal is a pathology. So look up these words to make sure you understand what's being said. Okay, now let's continue. To speak of a whole society as lacking in mental health implies a controversial assumption contrary to the position of sociological relativism held by most social scientists today. They postulate that each society is normal insomuch as it functions, and that pathology can be defined only in terms of the individual's lack of adjustment to the way of life in his society. To speak of a sane society implies a premise different from sociological relativism. It makes sense only if we assume that there can be a society which is not sane, and this assumption in turn implies that there are universal criteria for mental health which are valid for the human race as much and according to which the state of health of each society can be judged. This position of normative humanism is based on a few fundamental premises. The species man can be defined not only in anatomical and physiological terms. Its members share basic psychic qualities, the laws which govern their mental and emotional functioning, and the aim for a satisfactory solution of the problem of human existence. It is true that our knowledge of man is still so incomplete that we cannot yet give a satisfactory definition of man in a psychological sense. It is the task of the science of man to arrive eventually at a correct description of what deserves to be called human nature. What has often been called human nature is but one of its many manifestations, and often a pathological one, and the functions of such mistaken definitions usually has been to defend a particular type of society as being the necessary outcome of man's mental constitution. Against any such reactionary use of the concept of human nature, the liberals since the 18th centuries have stressed persons who is overwhelmed by a feeling of his own powerlessness and unworthiness by increasingly doubt as to whether he is saved or condemned to eternal punishment, who is hardly capable of genuine joy, suffers a severe defect. Let's read that again. Chapter it up a little bit. An illustration in the feeling of guilt and anxiety which Calvin's doctrines arouse in men. It may be said that the person who is overwhelmed by a feeling of his own powerlessness and unworthiness, by unceasing doubt as to whether he is saved or condemned to eternal punishment, who is hardly capable of genuine joy, suffers from a severe defect. Yet this very defect was culturally patterned. It was overlooked upon as particularly valuable. It was looked upon as particularly valuable, and the individual was thus protected from the neuroses which he would have acquired in a culture which the same defect gave him a feeling of profound inadequacy and isolation. Okay, let me speak here for a minute, because these words are so powerful. Those who can understand what's being read, because it speaks specifically what's happening today. 70 years later, it speaks specifically what's happening today. This man was far ahead. He looked far ahead to the future because it had to be happening at that time for him to see it. Okay, let's continue with the reading. Page 24. Spinoza formulated the problem of the society pattern of defect very clearly. He says many people are seized by one and the same effect with great consistency. All his senses are so strongly affected by one object that he believes this object to be present, even if it is not. If this happens while the person is awake, the person is believed to be insane. But if the greedy person thinks only of money and possessions, the ambitions of fame, one does not think of them as being insane, but only as annoying. Generally, one has contempt for them. But factually, greediness, ambition, and so forth are forms of insanity, although usually one does not think of them as illnesses. These words was written a few hundred years ago, they still hold true, although the defects have been culturally patterned to such an extent now that they are not even generally thought anymore to be annoying or contemptible. Today we come across a person who acts and feels like an automaton, who never experiences anything which is really his, who experiences himself entirely as the person he thinks he is supposed to be, whose artificial smile has replaced genuine laughter, whose meaningless chatter has replaced community speech, whose dull despair has taken the place of genuine pain. Two statements can be made about this person. One is that he suffers from a defect of spontaneity and individuality, which may seem incurable. At the same time, it may be said that he does not differ essentially from millions of others who are in the same position. For most of them, the culture provides patterns which enable them to go live with a defect without becoming ill. For most of them, the culture provides patterns which enable them to live with a defect without becoming ill. It is as if each culture provides the remedy against the outbreak of manifest neurotic symptoms which would result from the defect producing it. I think that's a good place to stop for now. Go back and listen to this 3 or 4 times and digest it, so you'll be able to keep up as we continue. Matter of fact, go back and at the beginning, chapter 1. This is part 3. I think I start numbering so you can be able to keep up. So I'm going to go back and number these different videos so you know where to start. All right, thank y'all for stopping by. And until next time.